When the Avengers was first announced, I had some initial concerns based on the designs of some of the characters, but I was interested in an action-focused RPG featuring these heroes. After I got my hands on the beta, I enjoyed many aspects about the game, from the solid Golden Gate Bridge mission to the fun combat. But there were areas that had me concerned, with some bugs and glitches, an inconsistent frame rate, and the potential of controlling certain rewards to kind of coax you into the direction of buying microtransactions. But I still wanted to give the main game a fair shot. Even with the issues within the beta, I found myself enjoying how each of the presented characters played very differently from each other, and I enjoyed the steady amount of rewards that I was earning. After I played the full game, I was mostly surprised by the solid campaign, along with my efforts to max out my characters in the endgame content. I also encountered many issues while playing it, so the game sits in a weird position as being a title I think is awesome, but it also has issues that I want to address. As a video note, I bought an early access copy of the game, along with Square-Enix providing me with a review code for the PS4. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my review for the Avengers. Let's start out with the gameplay. Each of the 6 characters do operate differently, but each one has some basic common moves. The gameplay is like a big budget brawler. You have your light attacks and heavy attacks for your basic moveset. Heavy attacks are useful for taking out shields and dealing a bit more damage. You can also dodge and roll away from enemies and counter certain moves as well. Each of the characters have a ranged attack of some kind, along with being able to perform takedowns on enemies once they are stunned. As you damage an enemy, their stun meter will grow, and once full, you can perform a useful takedown on them. In many cases, different buffs are attached to performing these takedowns. For example, I would gain health back as Captain America for each takedown that I did. And lastly, you have the super moves that are on a cooldown timer. There is a decent amount of variety when it comes to the character selection. Thor can fly and hover around the battlefield, giving him more options to resituate himself during a combat encounter, or attack enemies from another plane. His energy bar is dedicated to providing him with extra armor for a period of time. When he throws his hammer, you can recall it at any point, and you can use this to your advantage to maximize your damage with it. Iron Man also can fly, but he has a lot more ranged options than the other characters. He also has the most utility when it comes with interacting with the environment. He can fly and quickly grab hard-to-reach items, and he can call down his Hulkbuster to do more damage and blow open doors to find hidden chests. Iron Man's heavy attack is also a ranged attack. He will auto-lock on nearby enemies, making him a great choice because of this. Black Widow does not have access to flight, but she is the most nimble character out of the 6. She also has access to her grappling hook, which is used to zip around the environments, and you can grapple on to enemies. Her ranged attack are 2 pistols, and this can come in handy because of how fast she can shoot them, and her move that allows her to cloak herself and her allies. Ms. Marvel can use her stretchy arms as a grappling hook, and she can do large jumps to get around. She is also a dedicated healer of sorts, with a supporting move providing more health for the team. Hulk is primarily focused on melee fighting, with his moves providing him with damage dealing and defensive buffs. And lastly, Captain America can wall run, buff the entire team, ricochet his shield off of many enemies, and go into a state of rage where he just throws his shield like a madman. Each of the 6 characters feels different from each other and factor into the replayability with this game. As you play as each of the 6 characters, you will level them up. As you level up, you will gain a skill point that can be used in the 3 of the skill trees: Primary, Specialty, and Mastery. Primary involves unlocking more actions for your moveset. Specialty relates to your character's 3 superhero abilities, and you can choose to specialize those. This is where some of the choice in player expression comes into play. Iron Man's energy boost can be modified to revive the entire team, or Captain America's ultimate move can be extended if he can take down more enemies while in this state. The Mastery skill is related to different specializations that you can choose from. Each of the different specializations have 3 different choices to allow you to have some choice into how you want to play this character. This also lends itself to experimenting with different playstyles depending on what your specializations are, and you can change those specializations at any time. In addition to your level ups, you have the new loot that you will find. The new pieces of loot will increase your overall power level and provide you access to new missions, along with providing options for additional buffs to your character. There are many different resources that you will find, and these are used to upgrade upgrade your equipment. The combat paired with the different rewards creates a fun and addictive experience. While many of the enemies do have a same-ish look to them, there is a variety of different foes that you will face. You have stationary turrets, ranged enemies, common foes, heavier enemies, some are like walking tanks, big mechs, and more. It should be noted as well that the enemies are not the smartest, but even on normal, they will put up a good fight. Also, the sound effects add to the satisfying combat as well. The distinct sounds from Thor's hammer to Captain America's shield shows a nice attention to detail from the developers. Between the different attacks and 6 different characters, there's just enough depth to the combat to keep things interesting, along with the different enemies that will require you to change up your strategy. While I will get into more details about the story and campaign later, I am happy to report that the campaign feels like a traditional linear single-player experience. It is very linear, but rather enjoyable to complete. The endgame content features less story with a higher focus on the combat and the rewards. In this area, the game is going to look very familiar to anyone who has played any of these live service type games before, like Destiny, Division, or Anthem. You start out by going to the war table, and from here you select different missions to complete. The missions range from short 10-minute levels to some that take place over an hour with different areas. The more interesting of these feature larger environments with some optional side objectives to complete. There are villain sectors which build up to a boss fight, along with vaults that you can find to acquire better equipment. This game does present some of the same issues found in other games in the genre, with a lot of repeated environments, but there's a decent amount of variety here, with hopefully more coming down the line. When it comes to the boss fights, they range from fine to good. I really enjoyed taking down the larger robot along with the warbird because it has many spots for you to damage and the scope of the fight is pretty great. One small feature that I greatly appreciated was how you can play the entire game in offline single player. And with this, when you're in single player, you can actually pause the game at any time. This may seem silly to mention, but many of Avengers' competitors do not give this option to pause in the middle of a mission. AI will join you in each of the missions, and while I do have some issues with the friendly AI, I greatly appreciated being able to play the entire game offline. When it comes to the gameplay and the setup for the missions, this is not going to blow you away or change the game when it comes to these types of games. If you do not enjoy these live service type of games, this one will not change your mind. It very much has the same positive attributes of its contemporaries along with their flaws.
Oh my God! Oh my God! What's wrong with your face?
When it comes to your AI, I wish that you could issue some basic commands. I do not want to micromanage them, but I wish that I could tell them to defend a position, attack, or use their ability on a door to open it. While you are in missions, there will be some doors that only Hulk, Miss Marvel, and Iron Man and his Hulkbuster can open. But if I'm playing as Captain America and I have one of those characters on my team as an AI, there is no way for me able to tell them to hit that door. This can add some needless frustration to the single player experience. Since most of the buttons are used up on the controller, I think maybe dedicating an action button for your AI to the PS4 touchpad could be a potential remedy for this. I do like how you can dodge enemy attacks, and I like how the game goes into slow-mo when you complete one. What can be frustrating about dodging is when there are a large amount of enemies on screen. You will be getting indicators from everywhere, and it's really hard to line up a proper dodge this way. The dodge works great when there's just a few enemies on screen. Along with this, you can jump over a shielded enemy and hit them from the back, but this is done by holding down the dodge button. The problem with this is that there's a small delay between holding the button and completing the jump. I wish this could be completed through double tapping the dodge button facing the enemy, sort of like how it works in the Prince of Persia trilogy or the Arkham games. Holding down the dodge button feels cumbersome for this action. There's a lack of synergy moves in this game as well. There is one instance of this with another character being able to use Iron Man's Hulkbuster, but the synergy begins and ends there. It would be great to have a situation where you can have Captain America throw his shield at Thor and he can hit it like a baseball for high damage. Or you can have Iron Man shoot Cap's shield to be able to hit multiple targets. This feels like a missed opportunity. I do enjoy some of the bigger areas for the missions, the location variety, and the optional side missions there, but but I wish that there was some form of exploration involved with them. The game tells you where all the side missions are. There's no exploration to this, and I feel like an area that would allow you to explore more would provide a nice change of pace. Along with this, I think changing up the side missions within each of these areas would help to provide more variety at those levels. While I generally think the sound effects are good, I wish that Black Widow's guns didn't sound like toy guns and had more bang to them. This game features more elevators than the first Mass Effect game. Thankfully they aren't too long, but you will consistently come in contact with them with a lot of mid-mission loading for the longer levels. For the most part, I like the villain sectors, but I feel like it was a missed opportunity to not include some special villains that are regulated to the endgame content. The villain sectors are recycled fights that you already experienced from the campaign. The projectile attacks need to be reworked as well. These attacks can create some cheap encounters since many of these attacks can deal way too much damage, along with causing your character to flinch and potentially take even more damage. There's some effort to bring some visual variety to the game, but the game needs more of it. Many of the interior areas all look very much the same, and they need to be able to change this up. The outside areas have more variety to them, with a winter area, some forests, and a few city locations. You could probably tell from my gameplay that there is a present issue with the frame rate. The game at times can look like this is Avengers as directed by Zack Snyder. This mostly happens when there's a large amount of foes to fight, but this performance needs to be better and more consistent. I had the game crash on me while in the campaign, and I had another instance of it locking up while in the story mode. There's a bunch of odd glitches that I came across, with enemies getting stuck or Captain America's face falling off of his face. There's a big glitch that I haven't encountered which can break the game. If your character is seen falling through the ground, you need to quit quickly so that you don't lose any of your progress. I believe the developers are working on a fix for this. The last issue that I want to bring up is unlocking items in the character battle passes. This allows you to earn extra currencies and costumes for your characters. You can earn these through challenge points. Challenge points are only gained through completing daily and weekly missions. In this way, the game artificially throttles the progress that you can make on a character's battle pass. This element of the game feels very much like it would fit at home in a mobile game, and it feels specifically designed to get me annoyed with the grind in this area and make me want to buy all the items there. I think this would have worked better if you were rewarded with a small amount of challenge points for everything you did. This way you can feel like you are progressing throughout the battle pass consistently, rather than feeling like you are being artificially throttled. I think this is a good move for the developers to provide new levels and characters for free, and with that there needs to be some form of additional revenue to offset this, but at the very least make your system not so obvious to the player where it feels like I'm being catered to buy microtransactions. And lastly, I like that you can buy costumes in the in-game store with in-game money, but the game needs to add a preview option to the store so I can actually see what I might buy. The Avengers has many issues that I feel like need to be addressed. Hopefully many of these things will be improved as the game goes on. I find the fun factor to be very high for this title, and for me, the enjoyable combat, rewards, and solid campaign still make this an enjoyable experience. When it comes to the single-player campaign, I overall enjoyed it while experiencing some issues with it. Let's start out with the good. The Golden Gate Bridge level is just as enjoyable as it was in the beta. This level is full of exciting set pieces, explosions, and a good introduction to each of the characters. You get a nice taste of how each character plays, and each one of them gets to have their moment to shine. While very linear in its approach, running through this linear chaos is very entertaining. This level has a high level of production, with the game switching you to different characters throughout the fight. Once Iron Man comes back into the narrative, he infuses more life into the story and the general flow of the game. While I have issues with some of the writing and lines said by characters, Iron Man's attempts at humor almost always lands, and I think a lot of this is owed to Nolan North's charisma and comedic ability. When Iron Man is on screen, I am always having a good time. The level he gets introduced in is pretty awesome as well. The build-up to using him features you running around his mansion as he is being hunted down, and he is trying to cobble together pieces of a suit to fight these enemies. This results in a big fight after this point, and I enjoyed both the fight and the build-up to it. For most of the campaign, I found both the missions and the story to range from either fine to good, with some solid combat throughout. Once Thor comes back into the story, the game has this strong upswing all the way to the ending. The last fourth of this game is full of entertaining set pieces, some good character interactions, and a satisfying ending. I really enjoyed the mission where Tony needs to fly up to space and go to the satellite. Here we find that Captain America was a prisoner and Tony rescues him. There's some nice moments between the two of them and a really awesome moment of Cap using an improvised shield to take out some guys. By this point in the story, the team is almost back together, so you have more options with who you want to use in some of the missions, and I like the final climactic encounters. The final boss fight was pretty good as well, as it featured you switching between the different heroes like in the Golden Gate Bridge mission, and this let each character have their moment to shine in this final encounter. I do have issues with the story, but with the majority of the game being good and the last fourth of it being great, the campaign leaves you with this positive feeling. Now let's get into some of the issues with the story. I really like what the developers were trying to do with Ms. Marvel. The idea of having a fan that has a quirky and cute personality that helps to bring the Avengers together is a good idea. I just have mixed thoughts on the execution of it. There are some sweet moments for her throughout the story. I really liked her first encounter with Thor, and the ending was decently satisfying seeing her protect Hulk. But most of the time, I found her character and her voice actress to be more annoying than cute. For the most part, I feel like the writing for her is not as strong as other areas in the game. She has the depth of a side character, but she takes center stage for most of the game. There are some moments of her dealing with her actions, but I wish it was explored more. Towards the midpoint, she gets captured because she does not have full control over her powers, and this leads to her wanting to give up and go home. But outside of some small comments about it, this interesting dilemma and problem is not fully explored. This is another issue I had with the story, is how confrontations will get some time, but not the time they need to potentially provide more interesting drama. When we first have Iron Man and Hulk meet back up, there's a lot of tension there, but after Tony's mansion mission, the tension is dropped and doesn't come up again until much later in the game. To the game's credit, there is some nice drama between the two of them, but I wish it was explored more. There are other aspects about the game that are underdeveloped. I understand that AIM has allies and funding from the government, but I wish that they explained or showed how they were able to infect many aspects of the world's infrastructure and become this dominating force. The Bruce and Monica relationship has some nice moments in the interrogation scene, but outside of that, the relationship is not given much time to develop or explore it, and it's barely established. With the main bad guy being MODOK, I wish he was better developed. He gets a decent amount of screen time without much development. As presented in the game, he is a fine villain, but I wish he was better. From the gameplay side of things with the campaign, I found the use of the QuickTime events to be really inconsistent in their execution. There are some where the game will come to a full stop until you hit the button, not allowing you to fail, and then there are others that will act like you expect with fail states. I would have preferred them to be used more consistently across the campaign. I really enjoyed the creative switching between the characters in the Golden Gate Bridge mission and the final battle, but I wish this was something that was seen more throughout the campaign. Some of the levels could have played around having slick transitions between characters as you are fighting with them. Now, just like the campaign itself, I want to end this section on a high note. I did have a bunch of issues with the campaign and the story, but overall I found this to be a good campaign with a solid finale. When there are good moments in the story, they tend to be really good moments. I really love the moments between Captain America and Iron Man on the satellite, especially when Thor shows up to help them. The writing can be a bit bad at times, and some of the comedy just does not land, but the campaign gets more right than it gets wrong, and the last fourth of the campaign really brought it home for me. Overall, Marvel's Avengers turned out to be more fun than maybe I initially thought. I enjoyed the brawler-like combat and how each of the provided 6 characters play very differently from each other. The campaign had some ups and downs, but the final fourth really brought it home for me and ended strong. I appreciated how the story felt like a traditional linear story-focused experience, and an overall better single-player experience than one usually finds with these live service type of games. Being able to complete the entire game in offline single-player was another bonus as well. The game does have a large fun factor, but there are plenty of issues and areas of improvement that I hope the developers continue to address. Like I said before, this is not going to change your mind on these types of games, since the Avengers pretty much plays by the playbook of this genre along with its flaws. But if you're looking for a fun experience where you can play as the Marvel characters and beat up a lot of robots, then there's plenty to enjoy here in this flawed but very fun game. Thank you very much for watching.